All right, so we have a new sponsor on the show. We don't usually start off with an ad, but I'm kind of very excited about this. We got the sponsorship late last night. I am a big fan of the natural world. Ben knows this. I love the nature. I love to swim. I love pools, but even more importantly, I love lakes and I love oceans. These are things that I am invested in. And I mean, I've never been a hysteric about global warming on either side. Climate change is probably real, and maybe we could do something positive about it. I don't know. But I love swimming. I grew up around the ocean, and I grew up swimming as a kid with my mother. These are the things I'll always remember about my childhood, the smell of salt water and the sand under your feet running around. I mean, this is, so when we destroy the oceans, we're destroying not only our habitat, but we're destroying all these great experiences. So we're very happy to kind of, we're this new project that we're backing right now, and we're trying to involve a lot of our people in it as well. And just a few minutes of it to just kind of tell you what it's about.
The weather is very, very important to us. It actually affects every single aspect of our lives.
She's right.
Before I came to Iceland, I checked the weather. I'm super happy that I did. My umbrella was handy last night. I'm sure it was for many of you. It's essential for farming, when to plant the crops, when to take and when to harvest the crops. So I'm delighted today, for the first time, to be able to have the Weather Channel have a look at what's happening for the first time in history, actually, in the high seas.
Thank you so much, Gillian. And we've got wonderful new technology here at the Weather Channel, and we are able to deliver a point forecast for the Arctic high seas. And we'll take one location that is north of the northernmost part of Canada, near the Mean Islands. And as you might expect, it's going to be very chilly indeed here. Temperatures will, for the most part, only get up into the -20s Celsius through the entire week. So you want to take an extra pair of knickers should you be here anytime soon. And we'll take you to another spot on the other side of the Arctic Ocean, and that is north of Russia, northeast of the Anzu Islands. And similarly, it's going to be quite cold. Temperatures in the negative numbers all across the board right through the end of the week, getting a little bit warmer going into Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Now back to you in Iceland.
Thank you.
That's clever, because what she did, I don't know who this woman is,
so
but what she's doing is she's trying to get people into supporting the oceans, but she's using things they know, like the Weather Channel. I like this a lot. I don't know who she is, but she's got a bright future.
Today, because that is a first for the Arctic, it is a first for the high seas, and it's a first for the Weather Channel. So what's this focus on the weather? It's really exciting, of course, that now for the first time in history, we have the weather for the high seas in the Arctic. That's about 1% of the high seas in total. But what that really means is that almost half the planet we have no weather for. Think about that for a second.
Fucking crazy.
Almost half the planet that we don't have full data for the weather.
Jesus,
and as we know with our friends from
really?
Google and our friends from the fisheries, data is key, especially
data
in today's
is key,
world.
isn't it? Isn't data key?
So as exciting that is, I just want to talk a little bit about exploration. So
yes.
we spend,
I like going away
space
places.
Exploration budget is about 250 times more than that
I like
of our
what she does here, because she's
budget.
bringing it
that
into
might
space.
Explain some of the reasons for the holes in our ocean exploration. To put this into perspective, on the right-hand side, that's a picture of James Cameron going down to the bottom of the ocean at about 36,000 feet.
Yeah,
of which only three people in the history of our planet have ever gone down to the bottom of the ocean. By contrast, the very good-looking chap on the left is our space moonwalker, and we've had 12 people who have walked on the moon.
She makes it fun, which I like, because you want to. The environment should be fun. The ocean and space.
Because we've only
she seems
just
unfocused here a little bit, but her style is to just be in and out. You don't really know what's going on, but I think it's good.
But just to put that into perspective for you,
it's winning me over.
We map the moon to about between 7 meters and 100 meters, which is crazy when you think of that.
Nuts.
And also what's odd is that since in the last 40 years since we've been to the moon, we've brought back about 850 pounds of moon rocks. Again, by contrast, we take out between 100 and about 130 billion worth of fish, tons of fish, a year. Now, the variable, as many of you will know, is because we don't really know what the value is on the illegal fishing department, because boats, as we know, not all boats are tracked. There are about
illegal
15%
stop it for a
only
second.
of boats.
People have no idea how much of a problem illegal fishing is. It's one of the biggest problems in the country, in the world, is illegal fishing. People fishing when they shouldn't, without a permit and stuff. So much of it goes on. And it's, I don't know who this woman is, but the fact that she has the guts and the balls to kind of call out the illegal fishermen, to me, is huge. Let's let her go for another few minutes.
Boats that are tracked, for instance, in the high seas.
Yeah.
And just, I would like you to think about this for a second.
Okay.
I'd like to know how many of you would like to fly on a plane if only 15% of planes were talking to air traffic control.
I don't want it. I don't want to.
Or again, perhaps, if who'd like to go driving, especially in Manhattan, where I'm from, it seems a little bit more comfortable here in Iceland. If only 15% of the drivers had license plates.
No good.
We all know. I mean, I'm a bit of a speed demon, so I'd be whipping through those red lights as long as I knew that no one was tracking me. But what that means,
she makes
on
a
the
good
high
point.
Seas,
No one
is that
tracking
we don't
you.
really
Go
know
through the red
what
lights.
all those fishing vessels are doing.
Get on the
At
plane.
any given time, there are literally hundreds of boats out
fucking
there
fishermen
that
are
are fishing,
pieces
and
of
that
shit.
allows them to
They're
blow through the
pieces of
quotas.
shit.
It allows them to fish for endangered species because
use a drone and kill them.
Chances that they'll be captured
Capture them then.
frankly less. And so that's a problem because it's putting
all right. Well, anyway, this is the Terramar Project is what we've just entered into a partnership with on this show. It's called the Terramar Project. I don't know what that means. I think water and land or something, and both are very necessary. And this woman is fucking bright, and I don't know who she is, but I like the cut of her jib. And I just enjoy it. And so if you, like me, think illegal fishing is the biggest problem in America and the world, you will get involved with this Terramar Project to really kind of fucking go and get those illegal boats, because we need to know who's fishing. That's the biggest issue. Mm-hmm. That's the biggest issue on the high seas right now, on the water. Who is fishing where they shouldn't be fishing? So if there's any way that we can find those people, I think so many other problems are linked into this illegal fishing. It almost seems like illegal fishing is the way that the world is run. You see, there's all these fishermen fishing illegally for fish that they shouldn't have, that they should have thrown back into the water. And one fisherman knows that the other fisherman's doing this with the illegal fish. He doesn't know. And so there's this weird omerta-like silence around the idea of illegal fishing. None of the illegal fishermen tell on any of the other illegal fishermen, and nobody has a fucking license. Everybody just says, we're just going out for a fun, yacht day, but it's not. They're illegally fishing, taking fish they shouldn't have and doing God only knows what to it on a boat, and they all have each other's back, and it's a code of silence, and they bribe each other and they blackmail each other with these illegal fish. And this woman has the balls to call it out. I don't know how he pronounced her name, just something, but God bless her, and God bless the Terramar Project. Whitney Webb coming right up. All right, returning favorite, Whitney Webb, back on the show. She is a writer. Her articles appear at The Last American Vagabond, amongst other publications. She has a Patreon that you should support. We're going to put the link in the description of this episode. And I believe she is in the process of writing a book on the topic that we are going to discuss today. So, Whitney Webb, thank you for coming back. You're a fan favorite here. You were tweeting that you don't buy the Ghislaine arrest, or you think it's a little convenient or a little sus, which means suspect, as people on the internet say. What about it strikes you as fishy?
All right, where to start? First of all, just before Ghislaine was arrested, Virginia Roberts' attorneys were ordered by a U.S. federal judge to destroy evidence that pertained directly to Ghislaine Maxwell, claiming that they had obtained that evidence illegally and thus it has to be destroyed. And then they arrest her like the next day, right?
What evidence?
It was evidence, well, it hasn't been made public, right? But they claim that it had been sealed evidence apparently acquired through some sort of FBI stuff that was never made public and never turned into an indictment, right? And Alan Dershowitz was actually suing to try and get access to that information and was also denied access to it, right? So even people that are, representing the victims and people that were associates of Epstein have been denied access to this. But the lawyers who obtained it were trying to use it in court, and they said, no, you can't have this and you have to destroy it. And then Ghislaine is, arrested a day later in New Hampshire. But, that's just like one thing that preceded this. There's a couple other things that are interesting that preceded this too. But, just to start off, I think it's good to start with just talking about the indictment itself, which I really recommend people that are interested in this case actually take the time to read the indictment against Ghislaine Maxwell. It's only like 18 pages, so it's not very long. And that, for me, is the main basis of why I am very suspect of what is going on here. What they charge her with, I think it's 4 counts. One of them is perjury. The other 3 only relate to enticing minors to travel across state lines for the purpose of engaging in illegal sex acts with Jeffrey Epstein. But the indictment itself says that Ghislaine Maxwell was also involved in those sex acts and is basically saying that she sexually assaulted these minors also, but she's not charged for that. She's charged with enticing 3 girls between 1994 and 1997 to travel across state lines to engage in sex acts with Jeffrey Epstein, in which she was also involved. And the indictment even says things like it was Ghislaine that ordered these girls to take off their clothes and to touch Epstein, and that she would also become involved in a threesome or something. But she's not charged with anything related to that, right? Which is just like, why would you admit that and then be like, well, it's fine that you're a pedophile, but you made them travel for it.
Right. Right. So why are they not charging her with the actual molestation?
That's an interesting, I think that's a very valid point and a question that should be asked of the people, the FBI and the Southern District of New York and, the people responsible for this indictment. Also, as far as her arrest, where is her mugshot, right? Why hasn't she appeared in federal court yet? She was supposed to be arraigned yesterday. There's been no news on that about her having appeared in court. Right, that's not normal. Jeffrey Epstein had a mugshot.
Right. Now, if she was charged with actually molesting the girls, would that carry a longer sentence?
Oh, for sure. And it would also mean that she could be denied bail. Based on the types of charges she's facing now, it's very likely she'll be allowed to post bail and won't go to prison unless she is sentenced at the conclusion of the trial, right? So who knows what could happen by then, whenever that happens. It could be a protracted legal process. They've also set up the narrative that Ghislaine's going to cooperate with authorities, which, when that happens, results in a reduced sentence. So I think it's very likely, based on the charges she's facing, which are extremely light when you consider the gravity of her crimes, how many children she raped, how many children she recruited for Epstein, among numerous other things she was involved in. I mean, because this wasn't just 3 girls, like she's been charged with enticing to travel now. I mean, this network in which Ghislaine was, basically one of the key people, if not the key person, abused thousands of girls.
Right.
Right.
Right. Now, she's arrested. She's taken to where? Where is she? Is she going to go to the same facility that Jeff was in? Like where?
We don't know.
We don't know.
She hasn't appeared in federal court. Well, at the time of us recording this, right?
Right.
She hasn't been made to appear. There's no mugshot of her. No one really knows. That it was just reported that she was arrested, and then they had this press conference. But they didn't show a mugshot or anything. They just showed a picture of, Ghislaine and Jeffrey Epstein together from 2005, and they just talked about how great they are for having arrested her, even though they apparently have known where she is for a year, because the house she was arrested in New Hampshire, she bought 7 months ago.
Right. Now, wasn't there an article that came out a while back that said she was staying in either Massachusetts or New Hampshire? I forget. What was that article? And it said that she was staying with a guy, right? Somebody who owned,
His name is Scott Borgeson. He's alleged to be her current boyfriend. He runs a company that's a data analytics company for ocean freight, which is interesting when you consider Ghislaine's recent interest in this whole Terramar project of creating sort of these independent statelets, I guess you could say, in the ocean where international law wouldn't apply.
Right. But I mean, in her defense, there's a lot of good people involved in that too, like Bill Gates and the Clintons.
Right. Right. Yeah. But anyway, so this guy, right, his company, the main investor in it is Eric Schmidt, the former Google head of Google, right, who's also tied up with the Clintons and all of these fun guys.
Yeah.
Right? So that's who she was said to have been staying with. And what's interesting is after that report came out, right after that is when the fake In-N-Out burger picture photo op or whatever in LA came out, basically making people think that she was actually on the West Coast, which I guess now in retrospect was a way to divert attention from what was actually happening.
What was the point of doing that In-N-Out photo shoot? I never understood that. They photoshopped a movie advertisement in the background. Like, it was one of the weirdest pieces of political theater, if you want to say it's political.
Right.
It was this stunt. What, in your estimation, was the point of that?
Well, I think there's a couple of, first of all, it was orchestrated by her attorney. And also, let's remember the book she was reading, The Life and Death of CIA Operatives or something like that. And considering the whole intelligence ties of this. And also Ghislaine's face in the picture. I mean, she looks ridiculously smug and she's just sitting there in public. I mean, I think it was honestly sort of a way like, to slap everyone in the face and be like, you can't fuck with me type of deal. I think it was something like that. And, it really started this whole trend of media reporting too on Ghislaine that treated her like she was Carmen Sandiego. Oh, she's, in LA. Now she's in France. Now she's in England. Now she's in Israel.
Right.
About all this stuff. Where is she? Right. Making no one, acting like, implying that she was just traveling all the time. So maybe that's why they couldn't find her. Right. When in fact, she's been in the U.S. the whole time and they've known it and haven't done shit. Right.
Why do you think if they waited to arrest her, what do you think that was about? Do you think they were waiting for the conditions to be, because Barr, the Attorney General, this is not a person who's interested in getting to the bottom of this case.
Right.
Right. I mean, Attorney General Bill Barr, his father was the headmaster of Dalton who hired Jeffrey Epstein.
That's
so this
correct.
is
And he was also in intelligence. Bill Barr was at the Office of Strategic Services, the precursor to the CIA. And at the time he hired Epstein, his son, Bill Barr, was working at the CIA. Remember, that's where Bill Barr's career started. He worked for the CIA.
Right. So we have to believe that this Attorney General, who's been intelligence his entire life, whose father is intelligence, whose father hired Epstein, wants to get to the bottom of this story.
Right.
Right.
Well, I mean, you can also look at Bill Barr's past, right? He helped cover up Iran-Contra, pardon all the Iran-Contra criminals when he was Attorney General the first time under George Bush Sr., also a CIA director.
Right.
And helped cover up the Promise software scandal in which the Maxwell family was very intimately involved. Right. So he's not exactly a person who finds things out. He's more of a guy who covers things up. If you look at his, track record, he also worked at the law firm that was, offered that were the defense lawyers for Jeffrey Epstein when he was arrested the first time.
So Bill Barr was working at the law firm of Jeffrey Epstein's defense attorneys the first time Epstein was arrested.
That's correct.
Interesting. In what capacity? Just as an attorney or a consultant or?
I believe he was an attorney. The law firm is Kirkland and Ellis, I believe.
Yeah.
But that's where his defense lawyers were also part of that firm. But I mean, it's not like Barr was part of Epstein's legal team, but he was, in the same law firm as them.
Is there any truth to what's being circulated on Twitter that Bill Barr wanted to meet Ghislaine Maxwell, and her attorney denied that? Or is that just floating around on Twitter that's kind of unsubstantiated?
I haven't heard that, so I can't really speak to that. But what's interesting, though, is that about less than 2 weeks ago, Bill Barr made this big, there was this controversy in this very district we're talking about, right, the Southern District of New York, where Jeffrey Berman, who was the district attorney when Epstein was indicted last year, was basically forced out. And so the person that is currently the district attorney isn't official, they're an acting district attorney. And Berman was, just removed from that capacity essentially by Bill Barr around 10 or 11 days ago. And then, this other judge, also part of the DOJ technically, right, orders this evidence be destroyed, and then Ghislaine is arrested.
Why was Berman forced out? Is there an official story for that?
I actually don't really remember the official story because I remember reading it and being like, this is probably bullshit, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's worth pointing out that I don't think Jeffrey Berman is a clean guy, right? He used to work for Giuliani, who's like a really shady guy too. And a lot of this stuff, there's just different factions, different, I guess you could say, competing like crime families or whatever. And so like some of them are dirty. Well, they're all really dirty, but they have like, competing interests. But I think it's interesting, the timing, and I guess we can speculate as to why it really was, right? Considering what's happened in the days since.
Now,
I think it's possible, for example, that Bill Barr may not have wanted Ghislaine to be arrested at all, for example, because he, as you pointed out, right, has some sort of family tie to this case, right?
Yeah.
So it's possible that they didn't want this to move forward at all, even though, in my opinion, the charges are a complete freaking joke and are just going to mean that she, gets off light or, probably doesn't go to prison at all if she cooperates or they settle or who knows what.
What would be
because
the
fact?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No. What's the version of cooperating? Like, what would she do?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
It remains to be seen, right? But basically, even if she does give them information they want on certain people or, things like that, I mean, that's not going to be made public, right?
So it's very possible that she enters into some agreement where she cooperates and supposedly gives them information, but none of that is ever made public.
Right.
They have to decide what to do with that.
It depends on the nature of the trial, but it's very unlikely that it would be made public, and they could say it's for a separate investigation that's classified, and who knows, right?
Right. Ridge Wallet, yum. How many times do we have to tell you fucking people about Ridge Wallet, okay? This is the wallet of the future, the easiest wallet to sanitize, the easiest wallet to hide, okay? People won't even know you have it on you. It's a minimal, small, sleek, front-facing, front pocket wallet, okay? 30,000 five-star reviews, better way to carry your cash and cards. Easy to sanitize. Rub some hand sanitizer on your hands, throw the Ridge Wallet in there, and you're safe, baby. It's easy. It comes in titanium, carbon fiber, aluminum, and over a dozen different styles and colors. Okay? Get 10% off today. Free worldwide shipping and returns. Ridge.com/TIM. That's ridge.com/TIM. Link in description. I use it. Ben uses it. We love this wallet. It is a fantastic wallet, especially for the times that we are living in where there is so much uncertainty. So much uncertainty. Chaos, to be exact. And the Ridge Wallet provides a sense of calm and stability, even as you are being beaten by protesters or police, whichever side of the line, the divide you find yourself on. As they are beating you mercilessly because you are the avatar of a system that is oppressive and unfair, you will still find comfort in the fact that your Ridge Wallet knows how to take the beating because it is a tough titanium wallet, okay? And you're going to be able to, after the beating, you're going to be able to call a cab, Uber, whatever. You're going to be able to pay for it because they probably will not have gotten your Ridge Wallet. Your Ridge Wallet can easily fit in your rectum. It can easily fit under an armpit. It can fit in a fold of fat. You can even, sew your Ridge Wallet into your skin, which is, I'm sure that before Bill Gates does it, why don't you do it first? The Ridge Wallet can be hidden. You can put it in your shoe, between your toes. It is easy. You could if you tuck your penis back to appear to be a female, you can tuck the Ridge Wallet under your penile organ as well. This is something that a lot of people don't know about the Ridge Wallet, but it is not flexible because it's metal, but it is so sleek. It's just so easy to hide. It's so important right now. You don't want to advertise that you got cash. You don't want a wallet bulge. If you want a bulge, you know where you want it. But you don't want it in your wallet because people say, hey, that guy has money. I want that guy's money. Let's kill that person. Because that's where we're headed to. People are going to just see you and go, that guy might have money. Let's kill him. Let's take his money and let's get Little Caesars or something. I don't know what these people do. But I'm just telling you, that's where we're at now because no one has any money and they're going to look at you. And if you appear to even have money, it's a problem. So really the Ridge Wallet is a great way to disguise the fact that you even have a wallet on you in the first place. This is not the time to be, brash. It's not time to be making it rain with the cash out there, okay? Because people are going to light your body on fire and use it to warm their hands. So that's why it's so important to have a diminutive wallet that it barely exists. You barely know it's there. It's just a couple of credit cards, a little bit of cash, nothing really. It's simple. It's very, very easy. You stay organized. You know where everything is. And the most important right now, it's easily hidden. I mean, this is really the selling point of this. It is easily hidden from the people that will take it from you, which will be your own family soon, because we're seeing this affect different people in different ways, and your own family and community will rise up against you eventually and try to take what is yours, and whether you earned it or not, it's yours at the moment, but they're coming for it and they're going to strip it from you. They're going to take you. I mean, you'll need a skin graft to put back what these people will take from you. I mean, this is the truth. I mean, truly, that's why you should arm yourself to the teeth. I mean, I mean bazookas, like military grade weaponry, maybe get a kind of a disaster car that you could just kind of, fix, put a kind of a rocket launcher on top just so that you can kind of ride around town in style and also intimidate people that are trying to kill you at any given moment. So ridgewallet.com/Tim, T-I-M. If you use the code TIM, link in description, you get 10% off. They'll ship it anywhere in the world. They don't care. You're in Syria, they'll give it to you. It's a goddamn Ridge wallet. You need it. It's the way to stay safe. It's just a way to stay safe. Somebody asks you, they go, hey, do you have your wallet on you? You go, no, I don't carry one. I don't carry a wallet. It's easy because even your best friend, sooner or later, because how bad things are getting, they'll go, hey, do you have your wallet on you? If you go, yeah, they'll turn around and they'll stab you in the throat and just take it from you. Could be your own father. Hey, you have a wallet on you? Yeah, Dad, I do. Good, hold on. Stun gun comes out. He stuns you. You're laying on the floor of the house you grew up in, and your father and your mother walk out with your wallet. Those boomers don't give a fuck. Ridge.com/Tim, T-I-M, promo code Tim, link in description. Be safe, be smart, be Ridge. Anvil Rings makes awesome homemade jewelry in Western Colorado. There's a man there who's in the middle of a canyon in Colorado, and he's making rings out of the following unique materials: meteorite, whiskey barrel, ironwood, natural shed elk and deer antler, titanium and tungsten carbide, Damascus steel, black and acid washed, and many more. The rings are dreamt up, made and assembled in the USA. There's over 500 five-star reviews, and every single purchase includes a free Anvil Rings silicone activity band and an Anvil Rings faux leather ring box, which is very nice. This is a great way to get a ring for somebody that you care about, to commemorate something. You may not have the money to, buy something that is more expensive. You don't want to spend thousands, you want to spend hundreds, but you want to get something truly unique, truly cool. This is handmade artisan jewelry being made by a man in Western Colorado on the FBI watch list. And it's so important that he's able to kind of make these things for you, because God only knows what he'd be doing. This is his passion, is making rings. He could be in a militia, but he doesn't. He makes rings. That's what's so important. He's channeling all of his energy into something nice, like making a nice whiskey barrel ring for you, okay? That's so important. He's not a violent separatist amassing weaponry and getting ready for the coming civil war. He's making nice jewelry for you to give your lover after you've had a lovely outside socially distanced date at Chili's. That's what it comes down to, okay? They offer free sizers discounted after a ring purchase during this time to stay safe. Get sized at home. So you don't need to guesstimate the size of your finger. They will let you know. So whether you want a wedding band, an anniversary band, or you just want a ring that looks awesome, head over to anvilrings.com and use promo code Tim. This guy is great. I don't know who he is, but he's a fan of the show. I picture he's got like a beard, and he lives in like some type of shack, but he's got a really nice studio where he makes the rings, because that's his most important thing. You're helping a man live by ordering one of these rings. And most of the time he just, I would imagine he eats canned food and sits on a cot, but then when a ring order comes in, his eyes light up and he goes out and he drinks moonshine, and then by the moonlight, he smites a ring. Is that what you do? You smite it?
I think so, yeah.
He smites a beautiful ring, and then he sends it off to someone in St. Louis so they can give it to someone else. That's what's really important. And he just waits for these ring orders to come in. He waits and waits and waits and just sit on the edge of that bed, and he's got a raggedy old blanket, and it's all burned from, God only knows. He's lit himself on fire several times. He doesn't mean to, but this is probably what happens. He has flashbacks of Vietnam, even though he never served. But it's so important that you guys give this man work. No, I mean, truly. I mean, this is a child of God out there in Colorado, in western Colorado, in a canyon, living in some type of shanty, and he wants to work for you. He wants to make nice rings for you, He probably doesn't own any clothing. He just walks around. If you bumped into him in the woods, you would run away screaming. And I'm sure many hipsters do, these little pieces of shit that go out for a day hike or whatever, and then you bump into him, a real American, a true person, a man who's, doesn't have any fingerprints because he burned them off, and a guy that really just, he's not on the grid. He's out there, and the hipster kids bump into him and they start screaming and run away. But all he wants to do is make them rings to take back to their speakeasies. He just wants to make them rings to take back to their little bars in Williamsburg, and because they're cool looking and they think rings just happen. They don't happen. An old warlock of a man makes them in Colorado, and that's why we're so happy to partner with him, because he shares so many of our values, and we really want you to buy the rings. I mean, it helps the show, sure, but it helps us. We're getting rings. We have rings on the way,
yes,
and we're going to wear them. We're going to start wearing them. But this is a great way, in all seriousness, I am serious about everything I've said thus far, but in all seriousness, it's a great way to get a wedding band, engagement band, anniversary, a ring that looks awesome. I mean, it's just easy. It's something nice to do. You want to get your dad or mom or brother or sister or something, your best friend, your fiance. This is a great way to spend hundreds of dollars, and it looks so much more expensive than it is. It looks so much more expensive than it is, okay? And it's so easy. You don't have to go to Colorado and try to find this guy in a canyon, okay? You don't have to go find, the dilapidated van he lives in the middle of a brush clearing. You don't have to do that. You can easily go to anvilrings.com. That's ANVILRINGS.com and use promo code Tim to get 20% off. Anvilrings.com, promo code Tim to get 20% off a ring. Do it right now. Send me a photo of the ring that you got. We'll post it on our social media, and we'll tell you you're a good person. And then, just like a Save the Children ad, we will update you how the Save the Children ad's like, hey, your money went to buy grain for the child, or whatever it is. We will show you the automatic weapon that this gentleman purchased with your ring, with the money you paid for the ring. So that is anvilrings.com, promo code TIM, TIM, 20% off. Now, for people that don't know who Ghislaine Maxwell is, give us a little background, because you've really done some work on, most people know that her father was a media mogul who had intelligence ties to the Mossad, but you've really done a deep dive on the family. Talk a little bit about these fun folks.
All right. Well, there are a lot of places we could go with that, because it is really extensive. I mean, Robert Maxwell did not just have links or ties to Israeli intelligence. I mean, he was a spy, period. Right. He was involved with Israel before it was even founded. He was involved in getting, for example, the Czech Republic to send weapons to Zionist paramilitaries before the founding of the State of Israel. So his involvement in airplane parts and things like that, having those smuggled in. He was very involved with that whole, pre-existence of the State of Israel conflict, right? And that continued well after. I mean, let's remember, too, that Robert Maxwell's funeral was attended by 6 former and current heads of Israeli intelligence. The person that gave the eulogy was Prime Minister at the time, Itzhak Shamir, who said Robert Maxwell has done more for Israel than I can say today, and things like that, right? So it's not just like the guy had incidental links to Israel. He was also just involved in a ton of well-known Israeli espionage activities, including the Promise software scandal, Iran-Contra, the honeypot entrapment of Israeli nuclear weapons whistleblower Mordecai Vanunu, among numerous others, right?
Well, going to the Promise software, just out of curiosity, you've mentioned that before. What was that?
So it's kind of it's a very complex case, right? But to give like a brief summary, it was basically the software that was developed by the Bill and Nancy Hamilton of Inslaw Inc. And they originally sold it and leased it essentially to the Department of Justice under Reagan in like 1982. At which point the Department of Justice, basically through Ed Meese and this other guy that was sort of in the Reagan administration orbit named Earl Bryan, basically made plans with this guy who was a very famous Israeli intelligence operative named Rafi Eitan to essentially steal this software by basically taking it and not making payments to Inslaw for its use anymore, and then adapting it by inserting a back door into that software, which was then sold to governments, intelligence agencies, and corporations and banks all over the world. Not just by people like Earl Bryan, who I just mentioned, who made a company specifically for selling software, but Robert Maxwell had a Mossad tech front company called Degum that he used to sell that software, not just throughout the Middle East, but also in the Americas, Central and South America. Robert Maxwell also sold it to sensitive U.S. national laboratories in New Mexico that were used to allow Israel to gain access to that at a time when they were spying heavily on U.S. Like scientific and technological research, part of which is related to their nuclear weapons program. He also sold it to Russian intelligence, to the KGB. So Robert Maxwell was very involved, but also involved were people in the Clinton orbit, including Jackson Stevens' company, who was a major, political donor to the Clintons. Systematics was the company through which they did that, right? Which had ties to Rose Law Firm, which was Hillary Clinton's law firm at the time, and Vince Foster and all of that.
So when you talk about a back door, the software had a back door. The back door would be used to extract information from.
Right. So basically, any computer on which the software would install, that back door would allow Israeli intelligence access to whatever was on that computer.
So this was an act of overt espionage. Well, covert espionage.
Oh, yeah. Right. But, people in the U.S. knew the back door was there because they helped sell it, and they knew Israel had access to it. So they essentially allowed Israel's intelligence access to computers on sensitive U.S. databases, for example. Right. But also in other countries, But, that's kind of treasonous, isn't it? Especially if you're in the Reagan administration.
Certainly, yeah. And Robert Maxwell also was a major media mogul in the UK. And he owned, was it 6 newspapers? I forget. He owned a lot of...
Right. He was also a media mogul in Israel and set up newspapers there that still exist today. He also, at one point, owned the New York Daily News.
Really?
And was trying to expand. Yes, he was trying to expand into television. At one point, but unsuccessfully. He hated Rupert Murdoch. He was very jealous of him and wanted to be like Rupert Murdoch and have this TV empire, but he didn't succeed in building.
It's funny. We just keep hearing like planes or motorcycles. I love every time you're on the show, you're in like a safe house somewhere, and I just don't know what's happening. I just imagine people are loading planes, and then right after this interview's done, you leave, and then a drone strike just destroys whatever, and then you just get on a plane somewhere and go. We just hear
my life sound a lot more exciting than it really is.
Yeah.
I kind of like it.
No, it's just funny. Like all we hear, like you're like talking about Promise Software, and in the back we hear like, get out. So Maxwell, obviously the guy is a spy. He's an Israeli spy. There's a lot of Israeli spies, but this guy assimilates into British high society.
Yes.
Yeah, and he becomes, the Mossad is one of the most successful intelligence agencies in the world, and they've, I think the Minister of Syrian Defense at one time was a Mossad agent. Like, they really infiltrate places. They're very good at it. And so for Maxwell's entire career, and Seymour Hersh, I think, wrote a book about him, about his activities too.
He was mentioned in the Samson Option, which is about Israel's nuclear weapons program, and that directly discussed Maxwell's involvement in the arrest of the whistleblower about Israel's nuclear weapons program, Mordecai Benunu.
Right. So this isn't a conspiracy theory. This is as factual as you get. Who are his children?
Right. Well, it depends on which one you want to start with, right? But what's interesting, I think arguably the most important are Ghislaine's twin sisters, Christine and Isabel, who get very little attention. But really quickly,
where are they? Are they on TikTok?
No. One of them, I think, now teaches at the University of Texas. Another one I'm not exactly sure what she's doing now, because a lot of what I've looked at are their involvement in the tech industry, because one of them, Christine in particular, was involved with a very, very shady software program, counterterrorism program that was put on the databases of the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, and a bunch of other sensitive databases for U.S. intelligence and U.S. national security. And her father, of course, was the promised software salesman. And apparently no one saw any problems with that, right? But we can get into that, I guess, in more detail. But basically what these sisters did is that they created one of the first search engines called Magellan in the mid-90s. And actually in that company, it wasn't just the twins, but also Ghislaine Maxwell had a stake in that, as did her brother Kevin Maxwell, who was sort of Robert Maxwell's heir apparent and sort of inherited his media empire after his death, that of course collapsed soon after because it had, was in major financial difficulty.
Well, Robert Maxwell had stolen a lot of money from his employees, right? He stole hundreds of millions of dollars. Yeah.
Right. Well, also it was more than that. It wasn't just, the official story is that he just embezzled funds for his own use, which is also true. But the reason, the money for him to even purchase that media group had come from Mossad and Mossad backers, financiers of Mossad. And so what a lot of that money was used for, Maxwell basically got in the habit on Mossad's behalf of taking money out of that pension fund. It was used to finance Mossad activities in Europe. And then after those operations concluded, the money would be put back in, right, to these pension funds. But as this was going on over time, Maxwell started taking money for him because he lived a very ostentatious lifestyle. He was very fond of prostitutes and things of that nature. So, he spent money on a lot of things, right?
Right. So his two daughters are living in the U.S. at the time they developed Magellan?
Yeah, they moved to Silicon Valley after Robert Maxwell died. And they created this search engine. It was sold off to Excite. It doesn't exist anymore because, Google basically made it irrelevant, right? Though actually Excite, which acquired this search engine, tried to buy Google at one point, but it didn't work out. But basically what happened after this company was sold off, Magellan was sold off, is that Christine Maxwell created this company called Chiliad. And what Chiliad, basically became this data analysis software that after September 11th was heavily promoted as, I don't know how much you have gone into 9/11 on your show, right? But basically it was claimed after the official narrative of 9/11 came out that only this software was capable of connecting the dots that explained the official narrative of 9/11 that, U.S. intelligence missed prior to the attacks, right? And so after that, the 9/11 Commission basically gave this company the only A on their report card for counterterrorism and counterintelligence software, leading to it being installed on all of these, sensitive databases in the U.S. And what's interesting is that one of the members of the 9/11 Commission that pushed really hard for Chiliad was a guy named John Lehman, who was Secretary of the Navy under Reagan and used to be a frequent guest on Robert Maxwell's yacht.
So this is like Promise 2.
Yeah.
Now, it's amazing to me, you had said on Twitter that the type of operations that Epstein and Ghislaine were running were no longer going to be necessary or not as necessary because a lot of blackmail was now just going to be tech. So explain that, because this is very interesting. I had no idea how deeply connected the Maxwell family was to these major tech companies. Oh,
yeah. Well, actually, Isabel Maxwell had a separate company that's an Israeli-based company that's now called Siren, but was previously called ComTouch. And she was the president of that company. And they run, their software is integrated into numerous aspects of Microsoft Windows. They're run by Google and also on Dell computers, right? So, it's not just Christine's Chiliad, it's also, running on all these Windows computers all over the world, Isabel's Maxwell stuff. But anyway, in terms of what I'm saying about why the people that sponsored Epstein and Dillon, are favoring tech stuff is because, all you have to do is look at what Epstein did started to do right before he was arrested last year, or what he was doing right before he was arrested last year, and what he started to do around the year 2012, which is a really key year for a lot of this stuff, right? What he started to do is he started to rebrand as a tech investor. And he got interested in Silicon Valley. He started going to a lot of Silicon Valley parties, and he claimed that he had a lot of blackmail on people from Silicon Valley, right? And he was talking, he had ties, to like Elon Musk. He was at events with Mark Zuckerberg. He was, he invited Sergey Brin, one of the Google co-founders, over to his house. He was really ingratiating himself with Silicon Valley's elite, right? Which is very interesting, especially when you consider the fact that he was one of the major funders of a company called Carbine 911 that was chaired and directed until just very recently by Ehud Barak, right, who was head of Israeli military intelligence when Epstein was recruited to work there, which was facilitated by Robert Maxwell in the 1980s, right? And then Ehud Barak was prime minister of Israel, and was, went to Epstein's island. He also went to the apartments owned by Epstein's brother that were full of underage Eastern European girls and spent the night there on several occasions. Right.
So this is the new battleground for information, clearly, is the digital space. So if you're an intelligence agency and you want to gain knowledge, you want to gain information and power and blackmail, the way to do that now is through blackmail as opposed to like just the honeypot operations that they were running on Epstein's island. And do you think the entire family's involved? Like you have Ghislaine's sisters doing this. Do they know what they're doing? Are all of these people in
I think so.
Yeah. Right.
So like one of Isabel Maxwell's companies that she's involved in is called Israel Venture Capital, I believe. And one of their main backers is a venture capital firm called Lilat Capital Partners. And they are made by Israel's former members of Israel's Unit 8200, which is part of Israel's military intelligence. And they openly say they only invest in companies that are full of former Israeli military intelligence guys. But, talking about this whole tech thing and what I brought up about 2012, it's really important to point some things out because basically I think they got to the point where they don't even try and hide it anymore. So in 2012, this policy began, and this was reported in Israeli media, but not in the US media, right? These former and current government and intelligence officials told this Israeli media outlet, Calculus Tech, that in 2012, this decision was made to take operations that had previously been conducted in-house by Mossad and Israel's military intelligence and to spin them off and have them be instead conducted by private companies, some of which were created for that explicit purpose. One of those companies named in the article is Black Cube, right? Whose former board of chairman used to be Mayor Dagan, head of the Mossad. And of course, they basically act like a privatized Mossad, right? But they were set up to be an actual privatized Mossad. And they are not the only company like this. There have been numerous companies that have just become huge since 2012 that have been direct beneficiaries of that policy. Right. So an example would be this company called Cyber Reason, whose CEO he straight up says in an interview, it's just really crazy. He says his work at this company, Cyber Reason, which is a cybersecurity company, is a direct continuation of his service to Unit 8200. And at Unit 8200, he was the head of the unit that was involved in the offensive hacking of nation states. Right. And he's at the cybersecurity company, which, by the way, is running on a bunch of Pentagon computers, CIA and NSA computers, just like Chiliad was. And it's no coincidence, I think, that Chiliad's operations in the U.S. as a U.S. government contractor started to wind down right in 2012 when this new policy became, overt. Right.
Right. I mean, this is wild. I mean, you've done so much research. It's amazing that you keep all these names of these companies straight because it's very hard, I'm sure, to find these things out. I mean, I'm sure, you do your research and everything like that. What do you say to people that say that this is a paranoid or that it's anti-Semitic or any of the things that I see people throw at you on Twitter, which I don't think there's a basis for? It's not your fault that Robert Maxwell did not work for, French intelligence,
Right.
But what do you say to people that say this is? I mean, it's amazing to me that this guy we know is a spy. His daughter's running a honeypot with Epstein. His other two daughters are selling software to the U.S. government, security software. And who are the other kids? But I mean, before that, what is it? What do you say to people that go, she just hates Jews?
Right. So the reason my focus, ever since I've been writing, is to report undercovered stories. And unfortunately, there is just a lack of coverage of these things. That report I just mentioned that appeared in the Israeli media outlet Calculus Tech should have been covered in the U.S. You would think that would be big news, right? But no one covered it. Right. So so I think that should be covered. So I'm going to cover it. Right. And so, a lot of my research just ended up being on undercover things, a lot of which had to do with Israel. But I think it's very, important also. But let's keep in mind, too, that a lot of this, these Unit 8200 and these Mossad companies or whatever, a lot of them have members of U.S. intelligence or, people from the U.S. national security state on their board or as investors and things like that. I mean, it's definitely something that transcends just Israel as a nation and involves, U.S. intelligence, also British intelligence. And things like that. Israel, even just as a state, had a lot of the reason it even exists as a state is because of, the politics and the actions of the British Empire at the time and also of the United States.
Right.
So,
and it's like when you're talking about the Mossad, you're not talking about Israeli people or Jewish people. No. And it's like when I say the CIA killed Kennedy, I don't mean my Uncle Steve killed Kennedy. I mean the CIA, Yeah. So
right. So if you're like criticizing Mossad and people say that's anti-Semitic, I mean, that's sort of like if you want to criticize the CIA in the U.S. and people are like, oh, well, that's anti-American. I mean, who thinks that, right?
Right.
Intelligence agencies, by virtue of what they do, operate as organized criminal organizations.
Correct.
They deserve to be criticized, right? If Israel's military intelligence was involved in a pedophile honeypot, like Epstein and Maxwell, well, it's also historical fact the CIA has been involved in numerous such operations in the past, right? So it's okay to criticize the CIA for doing a horrible act like that, but it's not okay to criticize, Israeli intelligence.
Right.
It's okay for them to support pedophilia in the pursuit of political control and influence. I mean, no. So, it's just a matter of I'm just willing to talk about this, and a lot of people, unfortunately, are not.
Right. So who are the other kids? You have Isabel, you have Ghislaine Maxwell, you have Isabel. Who's the other?
Well, I think in total there were like 7 siblings, and one of them died when she was like 3 years old. There was another one that died at 23. But the other ones that are best well known are Kevin and Ian Maxwell, who recently just set up a think tank called like Combating Jihadist Extremism.
Great.
Or something like that. But
there's nobody in the family who's like an electrician.
Right. So anyway, Kevin Maxwell has ties to banks like Goldman Sachs, but he got, his public reputation as a businessman really took a huge nosedive because of what happened to his father's media empire that he inherited after Robert Maxwell's death, and became known as one of the biggest bankrupts in all of Britain and things like that. But I think there's a lot more to these guys than in the official story, because in some of these old reports that you can find up and dig up from the 90s that are talking about where is the Maxwell family now from like British media, they'll say things like, this year, Ian Maxwell is director of 31 different companies. Okay, so like if someone spends all their time being directors of companies, or on boards of companies, it's like under 10. I mean, 30 is a lot. So given Robert Maxwell's history of having just like infinite front companies, I think it's very possible that some of the Maxwell boys were also doing that, because it wasn't just Ian Maxwell that had, randomly 30 companies. Kevin Maxwell also had, like, in another report said he had 22 at any, in this particular year. So between the two of them, they're directors of over 50 companies, a lot of which don't exist anymore, and they go bankrupt and then they just disappear and then they make new ones. I mean, it's all very odd. But it's worth pointing out, too, that Robert Maxwell was very controlling of his children and was also known to have set up lots of companies and lots of small corporate entities for their use. So, for example, when Ghislaine Maxwell, after her father's death, moves to New York City, she obtains control of something Robert Maxwell had already made for her called Maxwell Corporate Gifts. in which she started to move money around. And people didn't understand how she is officially supposed to have a small income because the father's, media empire collapsed and they're supposed to have no money, right? But somehow she's able to just come up with all these millions. Of course, it's later claimed that's Epstein's, but she had this, these corporate entities just waiting for her around for her use, right?
Yeah.
As soon as she got there.
Yeah. So intelligence is the family business, clearly.
Yeah.
So you have the two sisters running tech companies. You have the two brothers running front companies. Why does Ghislaine get the pedophile ring? Do you think he was at Christmas or Hanukkah, whatever, was going through everybody and goes, "You're going to do tech, you're going to do this, and Ghislaine, you're going to do pedophilia"? And was she like, "But I want to do tech"? And he's like, "You're not meant for that. You go and put those girls in a van."
Right. So a lot of times in media reports, Ghislaine is sort of treated as, they say, "Oh, she's the child that inherited his charisma and social ambition and all of this." But apparently, as I mentioned earlier, Robert Maxwell had, spent tons of money on prostitutes. And actually, when he would go to visit Israel, they would have several prostitutes waiting for him upon his arrival, right? So he was kind of an interesting guy, right? So based on what we know about Ghislaine, it seems like she seemed to have inherited that as well. But let's talk about the types of circles that Ghislaine Maxwell was involved in the 1980s before she started this operation with Epstein in 1991, right? As an example, she was involved with some guy that later, had close ties to this guy, this conservative politician in the UK named Harvey Procter. Harvey Procter was accused of being part of a VIP pedophile ring, the same one that was run by Jimmy Savile, and also involved former Prime Minister of the UK, Ted Heath, right? So this is one of the people she was dating during that period of time, allegedly. One of her other boyfriends that preceded Epstein was this Italian guy who was a count, and his grandfather was Mussolini's finance minister and had deep ties to Italian intelligence, right? So these are the kinds of people she was dating. Also, other weird things, she was known to have been associated with the royal family. Then Maria Farmer saw pictures of her, with Prince Andrew at quite young ages, like young teenagers and things like that, right? So those ties go back quite far. Of course, the royal family had ties to that whole Jimmy Savile network, and also a lot of, shady activities like that, which is why it's not that odd, I guess, at the end of the day, why Prince Andrew would associate himself with people like Jeffrey Epstein in a public way years later, right? But another thing that's odd about Ghislaine, one incident that has gotten very little coverage that Ghislaine was involved in the 1980s, is that in 1985 she throws a gala at this house of these nobles, British nobles, who I believe were like the Marquess of Bath or something like that, were their titles, and it was to benefit Save the Children, right, in 1985. And right after that gala ended, the son of those nobles, of the Marquess of Bath, was found dead, hanging with a bedspread around his neck. And that's normal for Ghislaine, I guess.
Hold on.
In the 1980s.
Go over that again. She's having a dinner party for the nobles.
It's a gala to benefit Save the Children.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
The organization or whatever. And it's held at these nobles' house, the Marquess of Bath, right?
Yeah.
It's attended by members of the royal family.
Right.
At the end of the gala, the son of the Marquess of Bath is found dead, hanging with a bedspread around his neck at a separate location, but it's immediately after this gala that he was at, that was hosted at his parents' house. Just seems odd. And also odd that someone like Ghislaine Maxwell, who at that same time was involved with this guy that was, had this close relationship with Harvey Procter, is going on, and she's throwing a party for Save the Children. And if anyone wants to look into that organization, I really recommend the work of independent journalist Vanessa Beeley, who has shown very convincingly that Save the Children is into a lot of very shady things and has been for a long time, despite its name.
That's why I don't donate to charity across the board. I love earbuds, but they suck. Apple sucks. They're a cult, China, the whole thing. I mean, not that I have a problem with China, but there's questions. The newest model, the E25 earbuds, are the best ones yet with 6 hours of playtime. That's what's really great about these things. I have them and they just go 6 hours. And what are you doing this longer than 6 hours, okay? Seamless Bluetooth pairing, more bass, and a compact design that gives you a nice noise-isolating fit. Raycon's wireless earbuds are so comfortable, they're perfect for conference calls or binging podcasts. So if you want to go on a hike or a long workout or you just want to clean your house, it's going to take a few hours. There's no worry that these things are going to die out. You know, the Apple earbuds die out immediately. Okay, Raycon earbuds are both stylish and discreet with no dangling wires or stems to distract anyone during video calls. You've heard me talk about how the company was co-founded by Ray J and other celebrities. Snoop Dogg, Cardi B, Melissa Etheridge, all my personal friends are obsessed with Raycons. Pick up a pair and see what the hype is all about. I love these because they do last 6 hours. Then they charge up very quickly. And they go another 6 hours. It's so important. So now's the time to get the latest and greatest from Raycon. This really helps our show, and it helps you if you need earbuds. And if you don't, buy them anyway and have them there because you're going to lose your Apple ones. And you don't want to go back into the Apple store. They don't even exist. You have to go online. It's all processed, and they suck anyway. So get 15% off your order. Buyraycon.com/Tim, T-I-M. That's buyraycon.com/TIM. Use the promo code, 15% off your order for wireless earbuds. It helps fund the work that we do here and the work that Raycon does. These headphones are great. You're going to love it. I enjoy them. They last very long. Thank you. When I was a kid, my favorite cereal was Lucky Charms, and my parents would never buy them for me. But I love sugar cereals. In fact, many fat people get hooked on sugar cereals when they're children. That's why the cereals are always 3 feet. All the bad cereals are low. They're like 3 or 4 feet tall so that the kids they're on the eye line of the child in the store. The child can grab them. It's an old advertising trick, old marketing trick, okay? But here, no tricks, just goodness. Magic Spoon cereal is one of my favorites. You can indulge in any of the classic flavors, cocoa, fruity, frosted, or blueberry, plus a variety pack that lets you try all 4. My favorite flavor is fruity. It tastes like Fruit Loops, exactly. It simulates the experience you've had when you're eating Fruit Loops at your grandparents' house when you were a child and life made sense. Magic Spoon spent over a year working with the best food scientists and chefs in the world to recreate the taste and texture, and that's the most important thing, of a classic sugary cereal, but it tastes so incredible that you'd never guess it was healthy. It's keto-friendly? What? Gluten-free? Fuck you. Grain-free? Fuck your mother. Soy-free? What? Low carb? I'll kill you where you stand. And GMO-free. You've got to try it to believe it. It tastes amazing. Everybody loves Magic Spoon. Everybody buys it. It's a little pricey, but what is the price you put on your health and your children's health? Mm-hmm. If you have children, you need to get them on this cereal. I'm telling you right now. Otherwise, they're going to grow up to be fat little pigs. MagicSpoon.com/Tim Dillon. MagicSpoon.com/Tim Dillon. Grab a variety pack and try it today. Our promo code is Tim Dillon at checkout. You get free shipping. It's easy. It's my name. I love this cereal. I eat it. Everyone in Hollywood eats it. And if you hate Hollywood, everyone in your favorite culture eats it. Whether it's sports or the Trump family all eats it. Everyone at Fox News eats it. It's Tucker Carlson's favorite. Mm-hmm. Whatever you want. Whatever you like. You know, everybody eats this. The Democrats, the Republicans, everybody. You want to know what Jeffrey Epstein's last meal was? Magic Spoon cereal. He had it and he said nothing could possibly be better than this, so I'm going to hang myself right after it. After he had Magic Spoon's fruity flavor, he said to one of the guards, he goes, "What is this?" And the guard goes, It's some keto cereal. Epstein goes, "This is keto?" And the guy's like, "Yeah." And Epstein goes, "String me up." Because I don't believe it. Call me crazy, but if the cereal could taste this good and be keto, there's nothing else good coming. We've reached the zenith point of civilization. Hang me from this bed that looks like it would be hard to hang me from because I'm 6 foot something. So, and he did it. And he did it out of joy. He was so happy. Magic Spoon cereal. It's just, I love it. You love it. The kids love it. Everybody loves it. Get your little fat kids' fucking hands off the bad shit and get them on the Magic Spoon. If you should be arrested for child abuse with what you serve to the kids. Child abuse. Go through any grocery store. Everything that's aimed for kids is like disgusting. It's like s'mores pudding pops, you know, with Jolly Rancher sauce, deep fried. And it's grotesque. Give them something nice, something that they'll remember, and they'll grow up to love you. Not like, you know, the way fucking, you know, I feel about my family, which is it's a strong like. But I also, if they were killed in a drone strike, I would say, yeah. So the way I feel is you go to magicspoon.com/Tim Dillon, magicspoon.com/Tim Dillon. Eat it. If you're getting ready for a wedding, man, this is it. If you're trying to lose weight, you want to use the summer to get in shape, you're quarantined, you can't go out anyway, get that summer bod ready for next summer, you know, when all the oceans are running red with the blood of the whatever. But you'll still look hot. Magicspoon.com/Tim Dillon. Really try it. I am the most honest person in the country. And I'm telling you right now, I've eaten the cereal. I've enjoyed the cereal. I will enjoy the cereal again. And I will not speak to my parents until they start eating this cereal. So are these people all united by just having millions of dollars and having sex with children? Is this seem to be how our entire planet run? No, I mean, it's a genuinely serious question. Like, when we start, I mean, is this who's running the planet? I mean, it seems to all kind of add up, where it's like they use this, you know, sick thing to keep each other in check. How do you think this all works? Do these people is just a way to keep people quiet, keep them in line? They all I mean, is there anybody who's successful? Like, is there anyone who's not a pedophile who's doing it? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
well, I mean, I can't really give you a definitive answer to that, but, you know, what I can say is that, you know, a lot of people in this orbit, right, this Epstein network, whatever you want to call it, just have a history of just blackmail or ties to organized crime or ties to intelligence. Right. And blackmail for these people, I mean, they don't live like regular people do, you know?
Right.
Well, so like take Les Webster, for example.
Right.
When Maria Farmer was at his guest house, she was like, normal people don't live like this. You know, they spent hours watching her through pinhole cameras in that guest house.
Right.
To see everything she was doing. I mean, that's not how normal people live. They have so much money, but they're so paranoid. Right. I mean, because that's how like mob families are, and that's how these families are too. Right. And you look at someone like the Bronfman family that's tied up in a lot of this stuff too. They were tied up in Nexium, right, which also had like elements of blackmail and all of that there too. And then also like, you know, one of Edgar Bronfman's kids tried to blackmail him in the 1980s, faking his own kidnapping and things like that to his own father to get like more money from his own dad.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's just how these families just seem to operate. I mean, you almost feel bad for them, but then you realize that they're horrendous, evil criminals that belong behind bars for the rest of their lives because of their crimes against children and other people, right? But I mean, they're just like, they don't exist like we do, like regular people do, I guess, you know?
Right. They're constantly jockeying for position. It's like kind of like Game of Thrones. You have all these powerful families. They all have tons of money. They all want more money. It's never enough. And any information they have on each other or any of these, you know, elite circles that they can penetrate, there seems to be some type of cost of admission. And it might not always be pedophilia, but it also could be like financial crime. Or it could be like your willingness to, you know, infiltrate a government agency and give information. Everybody's got something on somebody else. So just laying that.
I think that's fair to say. But let's keep in mind too that like this practice of sexual blackmail and these types of operations, including those involving children, I mean, they go back to like the 1940s.
Right.
Possibly even earlier. Right. So the fact that they've been doing this for so long, it's just like, well, this is how things are. And as long as we, you know, abide by a certain set of rules that this group follows or whatever, you know, we can, you know, rape kids as much as we want and stuff like that. Right. And, you know, as far as how rampant
what gets me is like, is there anyone that's like, instead of raping kids, let's go on the boat? Like, is there any rich person who's like, let's not rape kids today, we can have brunch? Like, is there anybody? It's crazy. It's like, Truly evil human beings. The Clintons and Trump. I don't want to. The reason I haven't asked you until this long in the interview is because I don't want this to be a political story. Like, I don't want it to be politicized and become a battering ram where people on the left go, it's Trump, and people on the right.
It's bipartisan.
Right.
I mean,
it is bipartisan. Yeah. Right. Evil, satanic, pedophile cabals are bipartisan. And my audience should know that. Where do you see that the Clintons and the Trumps, how are they enmeshed in this? Are they just kind of functionaries in terms of they run the United States government? How close are they with these people?
All right, neither of them are clean, but in order to really explain the relationships, the relationships of this whole thing, I mean, it takes some time, right? Because the official stories about their involvement are just, in my opinion, very superficial. I guess probably one of the easiest to start with, because the Trump one's more complex because a lot of it precedes 2000. Right, a lot of the closer involvement between Trump and Epstein happened before then, but that's also true for Bill Clinton, right? Because the official story about Bill Clinton and Epstein says that Bill Clinton didn't get involved with Epstein until he wasn't president anymore. This is complete BS, right? So what we know, right? As I mentioned earlier, so like the Clintons had some involvement in this Promise software stuff. I mean, they were kind of in this orbit anyway, not just through Promise, but also the Iran-Contra stuff, which this Epstein network and the Maxwells and all this stuff were also involved through what was going on in Mena, Arkansas.
Correct.
I mean, involved in Iran-Contra in a huge way. Bill Clinton had a relationship with the CIA with Bill Casey. Bill Barr actually acted as an emissary of Bill Casey to Bill Clinton on several occasions, right? Another reason why he is shady as fuck, right? So anyway, that's how this is all before he even becomes president. But as soon as he becomes president, remember that Epstein and Maxwell officially teamed up in New York in 1991. As soon as he becomes president in 1993, they're attending donor dinners, fancy donor dinners, right? For the Clintons. And not long after that, Jeffrey Epstein, that same year, makes several White House visits, and he meets the deputy chief of staff on several occasions. What they discussed, I don't really know. But in 1995, we do know that Lynn Forrester de Rothschild, right, sends this letter to Bill Clinton that you can find, actually was provided by the Presidential Library of Bill Clinton. It says, basically talks about how she had met Bill Clinton at then Senator Ted Kennedy's house, and she didn't have much time to talk to him and had all these other things she wanted to talk about him. And she said in what she called this brief window of time to talk to the president, her 15 seconds of access, she talked to Bill Clinton about two things: currency stabilization and Jeffrey Epstein. This is in 1995. In 1995, Maria Farmer was decorating, right, and working as this artist in residence for Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. She remembers more than one occasion where everyone was ordered out, but they spent all day preparing for Bill Clinton to come. And Ghislaine Maxwell was running around yelling, "The president's coming!" and all this stuff. And the only people that were allowed to stay was the personal chef of Epstein, who died last month under sudden circumstances and no funeral because of the coronavirus. Right? Everyone's ordered out but the chef and the girls. There's no security detail for Bill Clinton. And he's a sitting president at this time, right? So
very strange.
Right. And this is all before the official, the relationship comes out in the open, and Epstein is involved in the Clinton Foundation. Ghislaine is involved in the Clinton Global Initiative. All of the island visits, the flight logs, and all of that takes place, right? Right.
So what are Hillary and Bill doing right now? I mean, other than sharpening knives, what do you think do you think they're nervous? Do these people get nervous? Are these elites kind of like, ugh?
Well, I think with the Ghislaine Maxwell arrest, I don't think any of these people are really nervous based on how this is going to play out, because I think it's going to be a very secretive, protracted legal trial that is going to get buried in the insane news cycle in which we now live, which involves coronavirus, civil unrest, protests, major geopolitical tensions. I mean, it's very easy to bury the Epstein story, unlike last year. And like I said, it's very clear to me anyway, they're going to let her post bail, and she's not going to end up in the situation Epstein was in, because Epstein was only there because he was denied bail.
Do you think they're going to let Ghislaine Maxwell, the definition of a flight risk, post bail?
Yeah, I think
Wow.
but because of the charges she's facing, they are so light, right?
Right.
In contrast to Epstein, right, who last year was denied bail because of the crimes were much more egregious that he was officially charged with, is what I'm talking about.
Right.
So, to deny someone the ability to post bail when they are only charged with enticing minors to travel.
Yeah.
Why did they choose those charges specifically? Why didn't they charge her with statutory rape? Why
Right.
did they, keep it at 94 to 1997, right? Well, actually, I can tell you why. It's because in that period of time, Prince Andrew and Alan Dershowitz were not, and Bill Clinton officially, were not on the orbit yet, right? So they
Right.
don't have to be pulled into this upcoming trial of Ghislaine Maxwell. It focuses on a time when none of them were, officially involved.
Interesting. So there's no chance they get pulled into it.
Yeah.
Right. Now, what about Trump? Is there any chance he's pulled into it in any way?
Well, no, because, based on these charges, no, right? But, Trump and his ex-wife, Ivana, were in the Epstein orbit to a significant degree during that time frame, right? Remember, Maria Farmer, said that she personally witnessed Ivana Trump going out with Ghislaine and recruiting preteen girls in school uniforms to come by Jeffrey Epstein's office and, see if they could be future Victoria's Secret models.
Yeah. It's really crazy. Trump did kick Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago because he was hitting on an underage girl. So we'll give him.
Well, there's a longer history to them, right? Because okay, right. So you have to go back to the 1980s and see what Epstein was doing then, right? So basically what Epstein was doing in this period of time, he was doing a lot of shady financial activity for intelligence and intelligence operatives, but he was also, with Leslie Wexner, doing a lot of money laundering through real estate and a lot of shady real estate deals at Manhattan, right? Of course, that's Trump's whole orbit too, right? And during this period of time in the 1980s, the Epstein, Trump, and this guy named Tom Barrack, who's still pretty close to Trump and head of Colony Capital, were called the Three Musketeers of New York nightlife, because they would go to clubs and get with women together and be seen together so frequently. And they were all in that same age range, more or less,
Right.
and involved in the same shady real estate deals. And
Right.
that's ultimately where a lot of that relationship comes from. Though it's worth pointing out that Maria Farmer did say that in 1995, she saw Donald Trump and he gave her this she found it to be a very disturbing look. And then Jeffrey Epstein said to Trump, "Oh, she's not here for you," implying that there was some other type of girl that he would set Trump up with, right? But this was one occasion, but it was enough to make an impact on her, right? And of course, there is that accusation of this girl who claimed that she had been raped by Trump at this event with Epstein in 1994, I believe it was. So there are these claims going around, but as far as I see it, right, a lot of their relationship was based around this shady real estate stuff that Epstein continued to do well into the late 1990s. Why was there a falling out between Epstein and Trump? Well, a lot of it had to do with this property in Palm Beach that Jeffrey Epstein wanted to buy, ostensibly for this money laundering real estate purpose or some shady real estate deal. He invites Trump to come see the property, and Trump, says, "Oh, they talk about it, whatever." And then Trump ends up stealing that property from Epstein and doing what Epstein wanted to do, and sells it to this really rich Eastern European guy, maybe Russian billionaire or something like that, who never actually lives in the property but pays a bunch of money for it, and then it just gets the house gets demolished, and really shady transaction, basically.
Of course.
But after that, apparently what Epstein tried to do at Mar-a-Lago when he was kicked out had to do with an attempt by Epstein to get back at Trump for what had happened there, and sort of get Trump set up with a minor, or have a minor get caught in some sort of sexual situation at Mar-a-Lago to put pressure on Trump.
So this is just a game they play. This is just the way that people are playing this game. Are there other intelligence families that are similar to the Maxwells where you have a lot of different kids? I mean, is this something like you have families of, very successful people in sports, or you have, are there just intelligence families? Is this a thing?
I mean, Bill Barr and Donald Barr are
Right.
an example of that. And
Right.
also, I believe Bill Barr's daughter also is involved in, in the DOJ as some sort of prosecutor related to drug trafficking, which is interesting considering, her father's involvement with the CIA during Iran-Contra, which was also, an arms trafficking and drug trafficking scandal.
Right. So it's like a lot of these families, like the Bronfman family, are they? Do you think they have ties? They're a pretty big.
Yeah. I mean, they're part of this whole mega group thing that was co-founded by Charles Bronfman and Leslie Wexner in 1991. And a lot of people, most of the members of that have ties to the National Crime Syndicate, which is the coming together really of the Italian mafia and the Jewish mob in the early 1920s that got in bed with the CIA during World War II. And the Jewish mob aspect of that got very involved with Israeli intelligence as soon as it was formed after the State of Israel, because like Robert Maxwell, they were involved in sending large amounts of weapons to Zionist paramilitaries that resulted in the creation of the State of Israel. And then after, Mossad and the IDF and all that stuff was created, was involved in sending a lot of weapons or money to finance their operations.
Yeah.
Right. So, the ties are very enmeshed. And so, the Jewish mob aspect that was run by mainly Meyer Lansky and all of that stuff during that period of time have deep ties to intelligence and also the political sphere of both countries, right? So like the mega group, for example, Ronald Lauder, close friend of Trump, is basically single-handedly responsible for Benjamin Netanyahu's first election as Israeli prime minister in 1996, right? So, he has pull there, what I mean? He's also a major donor to U.S. politicians, right? Another guy who's sort of in this mega group orbit is this hedge fund manager named Paul Singer, right, who's a big donor to Likud. He's also head of the Republican Jewish Coalition, a major donor to neocons like Marco Rubio, and members of the Republican Party that are very, neoconservative and things like that. He's also the guy in 2012 that created this organization called Startup Nation Central, which is a direct part of that 2012 policy and Unit 8200 private companies, tech companies that I was talking about earlier. And it's actually, based in, Paul Singer is an American, right? And he started that organization with the explicit purpose of having U.S. tech jobs transferred over to Israel and also having these Unit 8200 companies acquired by major U.S. tech companies. He officially says it was so that the U.S. would have to be dependent on Israeli companies so that the U.S. could never support the boycott, divest, and sanctions movement, the BDS.
Right. What is the end game of all this tech supremacy, do you think? Is just to kind of strip everyone of all their rights, put everything, about you in some type of bank, whether it's, your health data, your financial data?
Yeah. I think that's a lot of it, but let's remember this is, Israel is essentially just building the infrastructure for that's being used by the U.S. All of this is happening with the complete blessing of the U.S. government, U.S. intelligence community. That's why you have the former chief information officer for the CIA being on the board alongside an ex-Mossad director of this Israeli cybersecurity company, Sepio Systems. As just one example, right?
Right.
Why are they together? But, I think a really good case study about what are these companies doing? I can speculate about what the end game is, right? But I think you can, people that are listening can, come to their own conclusions based on what a company like Carbine 911 is doing. Because remember, this is the company that Epstein put $1 million in. It was directed and chaired by Ehud Barak, former head of Israeli military intelligence and former Israeli prime minister, and pedophile and Epstein pal. Right. So what does Carbine 911 do? Well, actually, before I even get there, let's talk about some of the U.S. people that are on their board. They have Michael Chertoff, former head of DHS. They have another former head of DHS, the one that resigned not that long ago, that was Trump, under Trump, Christian Nielsen is also on there. They have the former head of LAPD, and, I'm forgetting the rest of them, but there's several former U.S. Government officials and law enforcement officials that are on the board of this company, right?
Chris D'Elia? Kidding. Keep going.
No, I don't think he's there. There was also a major, at one point, he's not there anymore, a major Trump donor named Elliot Tawil, who's a New York real estate developer. And there's also one of the other major investors in this company is Peter Thiel, head of Palantir, very close to the Trump administration, right? And Palantir is a very Orwellian company who has been practicing predictive policing in New Orleans for several years, right? And has basically been developing, I mean, they basically, in terms of like what the Promise software was capable of doing in terms of data analysis, Palantir does that. And what's very creepy about Palantir is they have a label that you can put on a person, and that label is titled subversive. And you can use that to track their activities, but you label the person of interest subversive, which sounds quite odd, right? But anyway, that's just Palantir. So these are the people essentially behind Carbine. It was co-founded, right, by all these ex-Unit 8200 guys, one of whom recently left the company and now works for Eric Prince. So, you know, a fun group of people at the end of the day, right? So what does this thing do? The Carbine 911 is described as a next generation 911 system. The 911 system as it exists today in the US is basically varies on a county by county basis. It's essentially very fragmented. There's no nationalized emergency service system in the US. So Carbine 911 claims to be the answer to that. They are very closely tied to the main lobby that is pushing for this next generation 911, which is called NG 911, right? They're currently being used in several US counties. So basically what is different about this is that when you call Carbine 911 with your smartphone, the 911 operator doesn't just have access to your audio, they also can see you on your camera and they can get your geolocation. But also what happens when you call with a phone, any number that's connected and uses Carbine 911, all of the data off of your phone gets sucked out of there and goes into the Carbine 911 database. So what happens then? They use artificial intelligence to analyze everything you've done in the past based on all this data they pull off, right? And they also use that to analyze everything you've done from the past to the present based on what's on your phone. And they use it to predict if you will be close to a scene of a crime in the future, if you will be a future victim of a crime or a future perpetrator of a crime.
Wow.
Crime.
That is terrifying.
Yeah. And thanks to coronavirus, they have actually offered other services now, including remote government, and have partnered with the IRS and several DMV locations throughout the U.S.
I could just imagine them looking at my Postmates and Grubhub orders, trying to figure out if I will be a victim of a heart attack or if I will be a perpetrator. So so that's the end game. The end game is basically isolating certain things about you and predicting whether you're going to commit a crime, you might be a victim of a crime. And it's just terrifying when they're just building a case. So you're calling 911 and they're already building a case against you.
Yeah, basically. But it's not, I mean, this is just one system, right?
Right.
There's another company just like this that I wrote about. My article on them came out just yesterday called Diagnostic Robotics. They're applying the same idea of pre-crime predictive technology to coronavirus and lockdowns. They've already partnered with the state of Rhode Island, right?
Right.
And this algorithm was developed by the IDF, right?
Right.
And it was founded by ex-Unit 8200 people. It's just really,
and the reason is like you could see like, okay, contact tracing can prevent the spread of a virus. We can all agree that seems reasonable, but this will never stop there. None of this ever stops there.
So the contact tracing thing, right? It was justified as that, but what has happened since then? Well, when it moved from coronavirus to the protests and civil unrest, contact tracing was used by law enforcement to track people.
Right.
So what do you think, if this diagnostic robotic system, for example, predicts future potential coronavirus hotspots, let me point out that the person that created this company, after Unit 8200, she was immediately recruited by Microsoft. She developed predictive analytic AI-based programs to predict future health outbreaks, but also future outbreaks of riots and civil unrest.
Interesting.
Right?
Interesting.
And basically Israel is, because they're partnered with Israel's government and they're using it there right now. they basically promoted as saying, with this technology, we can lock down an area or an entire town in less than a day, right?
Right. So what this is just a way to establish really total control over the U.S. population or any population that might be angry or they might be protesting. This is a way to kind of clamp down on that really before it even starts.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's predictive. I mean, that's the whole point of it. And what's really creepy about that software is that they refer to a person who might get coronavirus in the future as a coronavirus patient at risk of exposure.
That's crazy.
Which implies that everyone is a coronavirus patient. And they're currently developing a treatment system whereby the government can use it and have all this access to your smartphone, right? And can develop this whole system and implement this whole system to mandate medical treatment, mandate testing, and also mandate that you take a vaccine when that becomes available. And they're piloting that right now in India, which is a major partner of a lot of this tech stuff too, because it's not just the US, right?
So the final frontier is tech. This is the message from Whitney Webb. This is where all of the intelligence types are going. This is where Epstein started focusing all his efforts, in 2012. This is where Ghislaine Maxwell's other family members have been since the 90s. Crazy. This is really, and Google and companies like that are on board. And this is going to be, and this will be, if you have an opinion that no one likes, if you write an article, if you do a podcast, if you say something on your social media that's considered to be antisocial or hateful or offensive, you're going to be able to be removed from those platforms. We're already seeing that. And it's going to be a way to enforce this kind of consensus that doesn't exist, because people are going to be like, no, I don't want this, or I'm angry about this. But it's not going to matter because they're going to have all the levers of power at their control through these systems to just hoard people anywhere they want them to go.
Yeah, well stated.
But they seem like all of these new movements that are popping up, like Black Lives Matter and all this stuff, these companies seem to be paying those movements a lot of lip service.
Well, I think the ultimate goal of a lot of these intelligence-motivated operations is about creating as much chaos in the United States as possible. Because what happens, basically what they want to do is they want to clamp down, right? So how can they justify that? Well, if the U.S. gets to a point where there's so much division, because a lot of these people, end up backing both sides, right? So the more divided the U.S. is and the more chaos there is, the more they can justify the imposition of order by force, right? So, I ultimately think that's where a lot of this is going. Ever since the coronavirus thing started, right, we've seen, the National Guard, there's these continuity of government programs that have been activated in case all of Congress gets coronavirus and can't be there. And then the military will rule briefly, right? And then there was the protests of civil unrest. There were these stories this poll says a majority of Americans want the military on the streets and the end of posse comitatus to restore order, right? So they're kind of pushing it along that way.
Right. It's like all the articles are like, this poll says Americans want to be vaccinated in their sleep. 70% of Americans want. Yeah. It really.
It's manufacturing consent is what it's about. That poll was probably complete BS, but what it's about is sort of getting people this is I can see this, because that's what polls are meant to manipulate public opinion a lot of times and manufacture consent for things, right? So, that seems to be where a lot of this is heading. It's worth pointing out, too, that company I mentioned earlier in relation to this Unit 8200 stuff, CyberReason, last year, and since then, also this year as well, have done several simulations with top people in the U.S. government that simulated major terrorist attacks on November 3rd, 2020 election day. And that a lot of this involved cyber attacks on the power grid, on sewage systems, self-driving cars, which are now being implemented in mass, right, with coronavirus, crashing into people waiting in line to vote, murdering Americans, among other things, right? And this is a company deeply tied to Israeli intelligence and also U.S. intelligence. They're owned by SoftBank, which has ties to Jared Kushner and Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia, and they're openly simulating, major terrorist attacks on the
This is a company that they're simulating terrorist attacks on Election Day of this year.
Yes, and you know what's also weird is that they have nothing to gain from it financially. They sell cybersecurity software and antivirus software. The simulations they're conducting don't involve the hacking of election machines or any software or any device for which their software operates. Right? They just claim to be doing it because they're so worried that something bad could happen to the U.S.
Do you think all these DDoS attacks that we blame on China, is that a possibility that some of those are maybe routine, like that they're running these types of simulations?
Let me give you an example. People may have heard, but it's not related to China, but you can see how Unit 8200 operates. There was
Unit 8200 again, just for everyone who might have forgot, like me. What is Unit 8200?
It's the signals intelligence unit of Israel's military intelligence.
Gotcha.
They're basically
Okay.
just like they're Israel's NSA.
Gotcha.
Basically. So I forgot what. Okay. So as an example of how they sort of operate, right? People may remember that there was this story that ran, I believe, first in the Wall Street Journal that said that Kaspersky antivirus software, which is, I think it's like a Russian company, right? And it was running on some U.S. government computers. They claimed that it had a back door, right, for Russian intelligence. Okay. And this was widely reported. And of course, in the climate, of Russiagate and all of this, it made some headlines. The origin of that claim didn't come out until weeks later when it was revealed that that claim was given to U.S. officials by members of Unit 8200. What happens afterwards? Kaspersky is banned from being installed on U.S. computers, but who takes over and who becomes the antivirus replacement? Cybereason.
Wow. So, it's just meet the new boss, kind of same as the old
Right.
boss.
Another thing about the cyber attacks, New York's power grid is currently being operated by Israeli state-owned military contractors. Currently run the hydroelectric dams in New York and most of its power grid are running the software on that.
When you look at the American media, and so much of it is left versus right, and so many people in America are left versus right, is it ever frustrating to you that nobody kind of sees the bigger picture where a lot of these people are on the same side no matter what they say?
Yeah, of course it's frustrating because the whole left-right paradigm is to distract people from the fact that the left and the right, the Democrats and the Republicans with numerous policies, they're essentially the same. They all support endless war. They all support, the Federal Reserve. They all support the Israel lobby and, giving
Saudi Arabia.
$3.8 billion to Israel at a time when how many Americans are unemployed now?
Right.
No, these are all policies that don't change regardless of who's president, regardless of who has a majority in Congress. So, basically the only disagreements are over like a handful of social issues, abortion, gay rights.
Right.
Maybe that's expanded a little bit more since they've tried to move the left farther to the left and the right farther to the right and all of this, right? But it's essentially the same. No one's talking about the billionaires that have totally, intelligence agencies that are fucking everyone over, right? So that's the whole purpose of that. Of course, it's frustrating. But in terms of the big picture, I'm only just covering, talking about, we've been talking a lot about Israeli intelligence today because of the whole Epstein op, right? But this is just one aspect of the big picture. But I think, one of the reasons that Israeli tech and all of this is being used is because no one in the U.S. media talks about them. So it's the perfect cover. They could be doing this on behalf of U.S. intelligence, and we don't know that, right?
Now, why do you think nobody in the U.S. media talks about them? Is it because they get hit with no
one wants to be called
anti-Semitic,
names,
right?
No one wants to be called racist. No one wants to be called anti-Semitic, right?
Right.
A lot, but there's some other examples, right? So, for example, there was this really great journalist. I don't think he writes a lot anymore, named Chris Ketchum. He did a lot of really great work on Israeli espionage, the Israeli art student espionage scandal in the early 2000s, and also on continuity of government programs and how terrifying they are, right? Because they were originally created by people like Dick Cheney and Rumsfeld in the 1980s, and I really recommend people look into that. But right after he published some of this stuff on Israeli art students and Israeli espionage in general and continuity of government, right, and some promise software stuff, the whole magazine he wrote at, which was called Radar, was shut down. One of the major shareholders in Radar at the time was Jeffrey Epstein.
Wow. Well, Whitney Webb, I want to thank you for being on our last show on YouTube. We appreciate that. We'll be in a safe house with you. Tell everybody where they can support your work. It's fascinating stuff. You do a lot of work. I mean, you keep the names of these companies straight and the investors straight. And I mean, again, very few people in the U.S. media are doing this types of stuff. And I mean, just to say another thing, we all need security. We know that the purported, the purported reason for these intelligence agencies to exist makes a lot of sense to people. But what people really need to understand is that this is way beyond the scope of like defending America or defending Israel or defending the UK. This is going into another arena, and it's actually preventing people from getting anything out of their government. Like, it's actually preventing people from exercising any self-control over their own government because it completely stacks the deck against any type of representative democracy. When you have this group of elites blackmailing each other, controlling the media, it's a problem.
Absolutely. Well, it's worth pointing out that these intelligence agencies, really, like the CIA, since it was created, has functioned as an organized criminal network,
right?
As the mob, right? And so what they're interested in doing is protecting their business interests in illicit trades, as the mob, right? Whether it's drug running, arms trafficking, human trafficking, the CIA does all of that. Let's remember the CIA's first director was is not only a Nazi sympathizer, he used to work for Sullivan and Cromwell, which before the CIA existed, used to do coups abroad in places like Panama on behalf of corporate clients. And that is what the CIA started off doing under Dulles' leadership, right? The first coup they launched was over bananas, in Central America, and they overthrew a government because of banana interests, okay? Just like what he was doing at Sullivan and Cromwell, and it's been like that ever since, right? It's never been about defending America for the CIA, right? And so the fact that they've never been held accountable for this, because any president or any, gets shot in the head, right? Or, I mean, just think of all the assassinations in the 60s.
Nixon was removed, Kennedy was assassinated, Reagan was shot. I mean, this happened all the time. Yeah, Martin Luther King was shot. I mean, Bobby Kennedy. Yeah, the list of assassinations in this country or attempted assassinations is wild.
Right, we're ruled by criminals. We're ruled by the mob. And people really need to realize this because these people have had infinite resources for years. They know how to play us off each other and against each other. And what they want to do can only succeed if we continue to let them, play us like that. Right. And we have to recognize, as a country, that the enemy isn't like, the person on the left or the person on the right, the person you don't agree with politically. It's the people, the criminals that have orchestrated all this shit from the beginning that are at the top.
And now you see the cracks. Like, you see the cracks, and people have always seen them, but now things here are no good. Like, it is getting bad, and people can see that. Like, people can see and feel that this country is coming apart at the seams, and a lot of people are looking for a reason, and one of the reasons is because these guys have gotten away with so much for so long, and there's only so long you can, run a country like this, take all of the money, deny people, basic liberties until you get to a tipping point where people are broke, they're out of work, they're angry, they're frustrated, whatever. People always criticize how I say that word. And people are really, they've had it. People have had it for good reason. So final question, and then I want you to, after you answer it, I want you to tell everyone where to find you. Is there a chance that Ghislaine Maxwell does no jail time and ends up, back in some estate in Europe?
Yeah, I think there is a chance of it. And that's why I think it's really critical. I've seen a lot of people online celebrating her being arrested. And sure, it's great that she's not in a mansion in New Hampshire right now, allegedly, right? But what people need to do is to put the political pressure on and be like, these charges are a joke and they're not enough, right? I mean, what they're trying to do here, in my opinion, is that after what happened with Epstein last August, right, one of the reasons this case refused to go away, even though they wanted it to, was because people were like, where is Ghislaine, right? Well, now they've found Ghislaine and they're charging her, and now people are praising this, right? And so if we allow them to set the narrative that this is justice for what Ghislaine did, then they will, seal it off and they'll work their best to memory hole it, right?
Yeah.
So the way to fight against that is to be like, these charges are bullshit. This woman is a serial pedophile rapist and sex trafficker who was sponsored by a foreign state and also had ties to intelligence here too, right? Those states, their agencies, need to be held accountable. This woman belongs behind bars for the rest of her life. And charging her for enticing minors to travel is not enough. I mean, the woman, there are articles, from before Epstein was even arrested the first time, talking about how Dillon would brandish whips and train young girls in sex techniques. People knew this stuff was going on. And we're supposed to believe that the FBI is investigating in good faith, and they're charging her for stuff from 1994 to 1997 in 2020.
Right.
And we're supposed to be like, good job, FBI?
Yeah.
I mean, no. I mean, I don't know. I mean, this is just, a clear indictment of this two-tier justice system. Someone like Ghislaine Maxwell, who rapes and is responsible for the rape of thousands of minors, is getting charged with this when they admit in the freaking indictment that she's a pedophile rapist, right? And people get locked up for like 20 years because they have like a joint in their pocket.
Yeah, they admit in the indictment she's a pedophile, and then they charge her for like driving with a suspended license. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
That's much how it is. And that's why I'm saying they're probably going to let her post bail, and who knows what'll happen after that. I mean, like you said, she is a flight risk. Maybe they'll be like, oh, whoops, she went to Israel. Oh, she went to the UK. Oh, she's not here. Oh, well, we don't feel like deporting her,
Right. Where do they find you? Where do they support you, Whitney Webb? You deserve support. You do a lot of research. I would be kept up at night. I could never look into this stuff with the depth that you do.
Thanks. Well, I have a Patreon where you can support me in my upcoming book on the Epstein scandal, which will have a lot more than what we talked about today. It's called One Nation Under Blackmail. It will be out in a couple of months.
Great.
My Patreon is Whitney Webb MPN for when I worked at Mint Press News. I don't currently work there. I have, you can find me on Twitter. That's the only social media I'm really using. It's _Whitney Webb. And I think that's really about it. I have a podcast that I don't, because I do a lot of other stuff, right? And I'm writing this book and I write a lot of articles. I do have a podcast that are usually just deep dives on articles or topics I've dug into called Unlimited Hangout. My second episode is going to be coming out this weekend. It's going to be, a deep dive into Ghislaine, the Maxwells, and the Maxwell siblings, going into a little more depth than what we covered here. So if you want to know some more crazy tidbits about this wild family, you can look forward to that. It'll be available to patrons first this weekend, and then sometime next week I'll make it public.
It's funny. They're like they're the Mossad's Kardashians.
That's a pretty fair way to describe them.
That's pretty. We won't. That would have been the. I would have titled the episode that, but I don't want to shoot myself in the head 4 times. Whitney Webb, thank you so much. You're the best. We appreciate it. Stay safe.
Will do. Thanks.